Without minimizing the great political and ideological distances between us, we want to seek and find avenues of rapprochement in areas where this is of vital importance for our two countries and for all humankind.
В канун 1986 года, выступая по американскому телевидению, я говорил о наших надеждах на лучшее будущее. К тому моменту за плечами у нас с вами, господин президент, были 2 дня женевских бесед лицом к лицу. Это позволило мне в своем новогоднем обращении к американцам сказать: когда-нибудь придет конец зиме тревоги нашей.
That is precisely what we're here for. In my 1986 New Year's Eve address on American television, I spoke of our hopes for a better future. By that time, Mr. President, you and I had already had 2 days of face-to-face talks in Geneva. This enabled me to tell Americans in my New Year address that the winter of our discontent may one day come to an end.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and welcome to this month's Live From at the Reagan Library. Remember, we do these on the first Wednesday of every month. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Now, I realize I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but the Reagan Library is still not open to the public due to the coronavirus pandemic. It's been 7 months. And to be honest with you, we don't really know when we're going to be able to reopen. So until then, we're just going to keep highlighting different galleries within our museum during these Live From videos and share what we can with you. And because the last couple of months we've had such a good time answering your questions live, we're going to do that again. So while I'm talking, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about or about the Reagan Library, go ahead and put it in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer those questions for you at the end of this podcast. So we've highlighted a lot of different galleries here in our Air Force One Pavilion over the years, but we've never shown you this gallery. Here in our Flights of Freedom gallery, we show how President Reagan used face-to-face diplomacy to promote his message and goals of peace and prosperity and freedom and democracy. During his 8 years in office, President Reagan traveled 661,708 miles. He traveled to 26 foreign countries, which we highlight in this gallery, as well as over 150 U.S. cities. Now, it's important to note that at that time in history, that's the most that any U.S. president had ever traveled. So on this wall here over my right shoulder, you're seeing 26 flags, a flag representing every country that Ronald Reagan visited while in office, as well as some of the photographs that represent some of those visits. Now, I said a moment ago that visiting 26 countries was so many back in the 1980s. But it's interesting to note that since then, every president has sort of traveled more and more and more. So for example, President George W. Bush actually traveled to 73 foreign countries while in office for 8 years versus President Reagan's 26. But again, in the 1980s, traveling to 26 foreign countries was unheard of. And it just goes to show how important face-to-face diplomacy really was to President Reagan. So for example, in this photograph right here, I hope you can see it, this is President Reagan with General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev. They're in the Red Square. It's during the Moscow summit. And at the end of these bilateral meetings, these two leaders ratified the INF Treaty, which eliminated an entire class of U.S. Soviet nuclear missiles for the first time ever in history. In this photograph, we're showing the first time President and Mrs. Reagan traveled to Europe after President Reagan was elected. And during that visit, they were able to meet with Pope John Paul II, and they met with him in the Papal Library in Vatican City, Italy. And the last photo I'm going to show you today is this one right here. This was a very emotional ceremony commemorating the 40th anniversary of D-Day. President Reagan spoke at the U.S. Ranger Monument in Pointe-du-Hoc, France, where he thanked the boys of Pointe-du-Hoc who championed the cause of freedom, as he said, the heroes who helped end a war. Now, the fun thing in this gallery is that we have 8 glass panels, and each panel represents 1 year that President Reagan was in office and 1 year in flight. Each of these glass panels have red rotating numbers in the upper corner, and those numbers are showing you how many miles he flew in that year. And then the map and the text on each panel shows just a handful of the key trips he took during that year. So we're just going to talk through them really quickly. In 1981, in his first year in office, President Reagan traveled over 45,000 miles, initiating the cause of freedom and solidifying international relationships with our Mexican and Canadian neighbors. During this year, he also traveled to a dozen U.S. states promoting his economic recovery program. So in 1982, President Reagan traveled almost 100,000 miles. He was pushing freedom in his messaging. He visited 10 foreign countries. He visited 24 U.S. states. And on those trips, he was trying to show that freedom comes in many different forms: economic opportunity, individual liberty, global democracy, and national pride. During this year, he also went abroad. He visited Berlin, and he visited Checkpoint Charlie, and he visited London, where he spoke at the House of Lords. In 1983, President Reagan traveled over 87,000 miles. He went to 26 U.S. states. He went to 3 foreign countries. And this was the year that he gave a speech calling the Soviet Union an evil empire. And the speech was to the National Association of Evangelicals in Florida. In 1984, President Reagan was campaigning for re-election. He traveled almost 120,000 miles. He went to 31 U.S. states, really promoting his Morning in America agenda. But he also went overseas. He went to Beijing. He was the first U.S. president to ever speak at the Great Hall of the People. And he also went to Ballypreen, Ireland, his ancestral homeland. Now, if you've ever been to the library and you've been in the pavilion, or once we reopen our doors, you hope to do so. The fun thing about that trip going to Ballypreen, Ireland, was during that trip, that was when he went and visited the pub called O'Farrell's. And the O'Farrell's had a back room called the Ronald Reagan, because they knew it was his ancestral homeland. And Ronald Reagan had a pint of Guinness. In 2004, that pub closed, and they shipped the pub to us. So when you're here at the Reagan Library and you're in our Air Force One pavilion, you can go into the actual Ronald Reagan pub that Ronald Reagan visited in Ballypreen, Ireland in 1984 and have a Guinness just like the president did. So we hope that when we reopen, you come out and try it. In 1985, following a landslide re-election, President Reagan still managed to travel to 72,000 miles. This year, he was really advocating for face-to-face diplomacy. He went to 7 foreign countries, he went to 19 U.S. states, and he was really creating a new era in U.S.-Soviet relations. In 1986, President Reagan traveled almost 98,000 miles. He went to a myriad of island nations. He went to Grenada, he went to Tokyo, and this was the year he went to Reykjavik, Iceland for one of the summits with Mikhail Gorbachev. In 1987, President Reagan stayed a little bit closer to home, but he still went to 16 U.S. cities, and he went to 3 foreign countries, really promoting his messages of peace and prosperity and democracy. But he still managed to travel 52,000 miles. And this was the year he went to Berlin, Germany, where he stood at the Brandenburg Gate and boldly declared to Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall. In his final 13 months in office, President Reagan traveled almost 88,000 miles. And he went to 21 U.S. states. He went to 6 foreign countries. And this year, 6,000 of those miles alone was Ronald Reagan campaigning for then Vice President George H.W. Bush to become President of the United States. And following all of that campaigning in November of 88, he came here to the Reagan Library for the official groundbreaking of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum. We are hoping we can reopen soon. It's a little confusing. Ventura County has turned into the red tier, which allows indoor museums to open. However, Los Angeles County, our neighboring county, also has to turn red. Their numbers keep increasing, so we're not sure when we're going to reopen, but in the meantime, keep checking our website, reaganlibrary.com. Keep watching our live froms on the first Wednesday of every month. We really do appreciate it. And hopefully next time we can answer some of your comments if you may have them. The last thing I want to say, every single time we do one of these live froms, we remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Reagan Foundation. We encourage you to listen to our live podcasts and our audio podcasts, which we promote 4 days a week: Monday Minute in the Archives, Thursday Throwback with Ronald Reagan, Words to Live By, and a Reagan Forum, all found on Stitcher and SoundCloud and iTunes and YouTube. But the last thing I want to say today is 1 week from today, Wednesday, November 11th, it's Veterans Day. And pretty much at this exact time, starting at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, we're doing an event to honor all members of the military. For all of you at home watching right now, that event is virtual. So right on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Reagan Foundation. It's a flyover. It's keynote remarks by Congressman and former U.S. Navy SEAL Dan Crenshaw. It's live musical entertainment, and again, a program honoring all of our military. But what's so important is we've been doing this event for over 20 years, and the Reagan Museum's been closed since March. And we received special permission from Ventura County to actually hold the event live for up to 100 invited guests. So our audience will be veterans and active military plus their family members, and for you all to watch. Again, it's virtual on youtube.com/Reagan Foundation, but it means the world to us that we are able to honor these military, honor these veterans by bringing them here and holding a live event, socially distanced of course. And we really hope you tune in and watch that to honor maybe the veteran in your life. The last thing I'll say is through the virtual program, we will be highlighting photos of veterans and active military. So if you have a loved one who is in the military now or who was in the military, if you send us their photo, we will include it in our virtual event. All we need is a photograph, the person's name, their title/rank in the military and what branch they served. And it's really easy. You just email it to us at info@reaganfoundation.org, and that photo of your loved one will be included in our virtual event. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time joining us each week, and we will see you the first Wednesday of December. Thank you so much.
Well, this is a very special treat. When I was growing up, and it wasn't too far from here, I never dreamed that I'd be flying into Decatur on Air Force One. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, there wasn't an Air Force One. But I am proud of my Illinois roots. This is where I learned about the values of faith and family and work.